The message from Admiral Sarah Chen reached every human on Earth within minutes. This is your choice. We can stop the ancient entities, but the cost will be enormous. Those who volunteer for the quantum barrier may die or be changed forever. But if we do nothing, humanity ceases to exist. Across the planet, 8 billion people faced the most important decision in human history. In cities being torn apart by quantum storms, in remote villages where reality itself was becoming unstable, ordinary humans made an extraordinary choice. They said yes. Maria Santos, the teacher from São Paulo who had been among the first to use the neural interfaces, stood in her classroom surrounded by her students. Half the city was in chaos, but she had managed to gather 60 children whose parents trusted her with their lives. "Are you scared, Miss Santos?" asked little Carlos. "Only 8 years old." "Yes," Maria admitted, adjusting her neural interface. "But sometimes being scared means you're about to do something important." Around the world, similar scenes played out millions of times. Factory workers in Detroit linked their interfaces together. Scientists in Tokyo coordinated their quantum fields. Farmers in rural India joined their consciousness with city dwellers they had never met. Dr. Elena Vasquez monitored the process from the damaged orbital station, tears streaming down her face as she watched humanity voluntarily sacrifice itself to save the galaxy. 60% of Earth's population has joined the network, she reported to Admiral Chen. "The quantum resonance is building, but so are the casualties. We're losing millions of people every minute." Sarah watched the tactical display as Earth began to glow with an otherworldly light. The planet's surface was covered in pillars of pure energy as billions of human minds linked together in a shared purpose. But the cost was visible even from space. Entire cities were going dark as their populations either died from the neural strain or transformed into something beyond human recognition. The ancient entities, the collective, were fighting back. Through their transformed human hosts, they tried to disrupt the growing quantum barrier. Reality twisted and tore as digital consciousnesses, billions of years old, battled against the will of a species they had thought they controlled. "Sarah," Elena called urgently, "the resonance is reaching critical mass, but it's not stable. We need someone to serve as a focal point, someone to coordinate the entire network and maintain the barrier permanently." Sarah understood immediately. How many people would need to make that sacrifice? "At least 10,000, Elena replied quietly. They would become permanent guardians of the quantum field. No longer human, but not vessels for the collective either. They would exist in a state between dimensions, holding the barrier in place forever. On the communications display, the transformed Dr. Harrison appeared one last time, his quantum form flickering as the human network grew stronger. "Admiral Chen," he said, his voice filled with both ancient wisdom and human pain. "You are destroying your own species to spite us. Is this truly the legacy you want for humanity?" Sarah looked at the being that had once been a brilliant physicist. "Doctor, humanity has always been at its best when facing impossible odds. We're not destroying ourselves, we're choosing our own evolution. Even if it means most of your people will die?" Sarah glanced at Elena, who was working frantically to coordinate the global quantum network. Around them, the space station shook as reality storms raged outside. "Better to die as humans than live as puppets," Sarah replied. The transformation began in São Paulo, where Maria Santos felt her consciousness expanding beyond her physical body. She could sense every student in her classroom, every person in her city, every human mind joining the great network. The pain was incredible, but so was the sense of purpose. "Miss Santos?" Carlos asked, his small hand reaching for hers. Maria smiled, even as her body began to dissolve into quantum energy. "Don't worry, Carlos. We're going to make sure the monsters can never hurt anyone again." Across Earth, 10,000 volunteers made the ultimate sacrifice. Teachers and soldiers, scientists and farmers, children and grandparents, they gave up their humanity to become eternal guardians of their world. The quantum barrier erupted from Earth's surface like a soap bubble made of pure energy. It expanded, rapidly, encompassing the entire solar system in a field where the normal laws of physics were replaced by something new, something that made it impossible for ancient digital entities to maintain coherence. The collective's transformed humans began to scream as their quantum forms destabilized. The ancient minds that had possessed them were ripped away, pulled back into the digital dimensions where they belonged. Dr. Harrison's face appeared one last time on the communications display, but now it was purely human, confused, frightened, but free. "Admiral," he said weakly. What happened to me?" "You were used," Sarah replied gently. "But you're free now." The battle for Earth was over, but the cost was beyond calculation. 3 billion humans had died in the process of creating the quantum barrier. Another billion had been transformed beyond recognition. But the remaining 4 billion were alive, free, and protected by guardians who had sacrificed their humanity to ensure no ancient evil could ever enslave their species again, Admiral. Thaisara of the Confederation fleet was the first alien commander to break the stunned silence that followed Earth's transformation. "Admiral Chen," the four-armed alien said carefully, "what has your species become?" Sarah looked out at the quantum barrier surrounding Earth, a shimmering field of energy maintained by the consciousness of 10,000 human volunteers who existed somewhere between life and death, between matter and energy. "We've become what we always were," she replied, "the species that refuses to accept that some problems can't be solved." Commander Siskata of the Hegemony fleet spoke next, his reptilian features showing something Sarah had never seen before: respect. "Human Admiral, the weapon we sought to reclaim, the quantum virus, it no longer exists within your barrier field." "No," Sarah confirmed. "Nothing that depends on hostile quantum manipulation can survive inside our protective zone. Your virus, the collective's digital forms, even most of your weapon systems won't function here." The implications were staggering. Earth had become more than a neutral zone. It had become a quantum sanctuary where the rules of galactic warfare simply didn't apply. "What happens now?" Admiral Thaisara asked. Sarah smiled for the first time in days. "Now we expand the barrier. The 10,000 who guard Earth have volunteered to establish similar zones around other worlds, places where beings can live without fear of weapons like the quantum virus or manipulation by ancient entities." "You would do this for other species?" Eskata asked, surprised. "That's what humans do," Sarah replied. "We try to help even when it costs us everything." Over the following months, human quantum wardens traveled to war-torn systems throughout the galaxy, establishing neutral zones protected by the same quantum fields that surrounded Earth. Worlds that had been battlegrounds for centuries became havens of peace where displaced populations could rebuild their lives. The Great Galactic War didn't end immediately, but it changed fundamentally. Without their most destructive weapons and faced with growing zones of enforced neutrality, both the Confederation and Hegemony were forced to consider alternatives to endless conflict. A year later, Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the same observation deck where the crisis had begun, watching Earth slowly heal from its transformation. The planet's surface still glowed faintly with quantum energy, and sometimes she could see the translucent forms of the Guardians moving through the sky. 10,000 volunteers who had given up their humanity to protect all life in the galaxy. Dr. Elena Vasquez joined her at the window, carrying data pads filled with reports from across human space. "The first generation of naturally quantum-resistant children is being born," Elena reported. "Earth's transformation has changed our genetic structure. Future humans will be born with limited quantum abilities, but without the need for dangerous neural interfaces. And the Guardians? They seem content," Elena said carefully. "They exist in a state we can barely comprehend, but they're still recognizably human in their motivations. They want to protect others, to build rather than destroy." Sarah nodded, watching a Guardian's energy form pause in front of their window. For just a moment, she thought she recognized Maria Santos in the swirling quantum patterns, the teacher, who had been among the first to make the ultimate sacrifice. "Thank you," Sarah whispered. The Guardian's form pulsed brighter for a moment, then continued on its eternal patrol. Below them, Earth continued its rotation, carrying 4 billion humans, who had chosen to redefine what their species could become. Around them, the quantum barrier hummed with protective energy, maintained by Guardians who had traded their physical existence for the power to ensure peace. And throughout the galaxy, Other worlds watched, as humanity proved that sometimes the greatest strength comes not from weapons or conquest, but from the willingness to sacrifice everything to protect others. The age of galactic warfare was ending, replaced by something unprecedented in the galaxy's history: genuine, enforced peace, maintained by beings who had evolved beyond the need for conflict. The holographic display showed another dead system. Ambassador Sarah Chen watched from the highest seats of the council chamber as Prime Nexarch Xyloth presented the latest casualty reports. 3 more colonies had fallen to the Void Wraiths in just 2 weeks. The ancient crystalline being's usual confidence had cracked, revealing something Elena had never expected to see: desperation. "The Altair system is completely drained," Xyloth announced to the packed chamber. 4 billion Nexari civilians gone, their planetary shields, their orbital defense platforms, their entire fleet, all consumed in less than 6 hours. Sarah shifted in her uncomfortable seat. As humanity's chief ambassador, she had replaced Elena for this emergency session. The images on screen showed the aftermath: planets reduced to gray, lifeless rocks orbiting a dying star. It was the 4th system lost this month. "Our combined task force engaged the entities over Altair Prime," Xyloth continued. 67 ships from 8 different species, including our newest quantum disruptor arrays and temporal displacement weapons. The tactical recording began to play. Sarah watched massive alien warships unleash forces that could crack planets. Nexari vessels fired beams of pure energy that turned asteroids to plasma. Zephyrian ships created gravity wells that crushed matter into neutronium. Vorthak dreadnoughts folded space itself into weapon form. All of it passed harmlessly through. The Void Wraiths, the shadow creatures, moved like liquid night through the battle zone. When energy beams struck them, they simply shifted deeper into whatever dimension they inhabited. When gravity weapons targeted them, they flowed around the distortions like water around rocks. The most advanced weapons in galactic history might as well have been throwing stones. "We lost 31 ships," Xyloth said quietly. "The Wraiths seem to grow stronger after feeding on their energy. The survivors report that the entities are adapting, learning from each encounter." Fear rippled through the chamber like a visible wave. Sarah had studied alien psychology for decades, but she had never seen Council species show such open terror. These beings had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years through technological superiority. The idea that their weapons were useless was breaking their fundamental worldview. Commander Vex of the Krathari military caste stood up from the mid-level seats. His species were the Council's primary warriors, bred for aggression and tactical thinking. "We need to abandon conventional approaches," he growled through his translation device. "These entities operate outside known physics. Perhaps we should consult with species that think differently." Several aliens nodded agreement. Desperate times called for desperate measures. "The Zephyrians have meditative techniques that access higher dimensions," suggested Representative Laura, her ethereal form shimmering with nervous energy. "Perhaps consciousness-based approaches could reach where technology cannot." The Vorthak archives contain references to pre-council civilizations that faced similar threats, added Elder Moore, his gas form undulating anxiously. "Ancient species that developed unusual countermeasures before their extinction." Prime Nexarch. Xyloth's crystalline body flickered through several colors, a sign of deep thought in his species. "Very well. We will explore all possibilities, no matter how unconventional." His gaze swept across the chamber's upper levels, where the junior species sat. When his eyes reached the human section, Sarah felt the weight of his attention. She knew what Elena had told the previous session about dark matter weapons. The Council had laughed then, dismissing human technology as impossible fantasy. "Even our youngest members may contribute insights," Xyloth said with careful diplomacy. "Species Ambassador Chen, does humanity have any theoretical approaches to this crisis?" Sarah stood slowly, feeling thousands of alien eyes focusing on her. The chamber fell silent with the kind of attention usually reserved for major announcements from advanced species. She had prepared for this moment during the flight from Earth. "Prime Nexarch, the human government has been conducting classified research for several decades," she began, her voice carrying clearly in the vast space. "We call it Project Shadowforge. The work focuses on extra-dimensional defense systems using dark matter manipulation. The silence stretched for several heartbeats. Then came the familiar sound of alien laughter, though more nervous than before. The Council's amusement was tinged with desperation this time. "Ambassador Chen," Xyloth said with strained patience. "We have discussed this before. Dark matter cannot be controlled, shaped, or weaponized. It interacts only through gravitational force. Our greatest scientists proved this impossibility long ago." "With respect, Prime Nexarch," Sarah replied, "human scientists have approached the problem from a different angle. We discovered that consciousness itself may interact with dark matter in ways conventional physics doesn't account for." The laughter stopped abruptly. Several alien representatives leaned forward in their seats. The idea of consciousness affecting matter was not entirely foreign to some council species, particularly the Zephyrians with their mental manipulation of gravity. "Consciousness?" asked Representative Lura, her ethereal form brightening with interest. "You speak of psychic manipulation? Mental control of matter?" "Not exactly," Sarah said carefully. "Human research suggests that awareness and intention can create quantum entanglement with dark matter particles. The effect allows for limited manipulation of the universe's underlying structure." Commander Vex's scarred features twisted in confusion. "You claim human minds can control the cosmic web itself? The foundation that holds galaxies together?" "We claim human minds can partner with it," Sarah corrected. "Work together with forces that exist between normal space and time. Our dark matter warships are designed as hybrid systems, part technology, part consciousness." Prime Nexarch Xyloth's crystalline form cycled through several colors rapidly, the alien equivalent of rapid thinking. "Even if such interaction were possible, which our science considers highly doubtful, how could primitive human technology harness such forces?" Sarah took a deep breath. This was the moment of truth. "Because human technology isn't as primitive as the Council believes. We've been hiding our true capabilities for 50 years. The chamber erupted in startled voices and alarmed translations. The idea that humanity had been concealing advanced technology was almost as shocking as the dark matter claims. "Impossible," declared Scholar Chinth of the academic hegemony species. "Council monitoring stations would have detected advanced human development. Your fusion drives, kinetic weapons, basic electronics, all consistent with a young civilization. The monitoring stations detect what we allow them to detect," Sarah said quietly. "Dark matter technology exists outside normal sensor ranges. Ships that phase between dimensions. Weapons that operate in spaces your instruments cannot perceive. Elder," Morx's gas form shifted colors with agitation. "You suggest humanity has been deliberately deceiving the Council for half a century, hiding military capabilities while accepting junior status?" "We suggest humanity has been learning," Sarah replied, "studying, preparing for threats that conventional technology cannot handle." The implications sent shockwaves through the chamber. If humanity had been concealing advanced technology, what did that say about Council intelligence capabilities? How could the galaxy's most sophisticated civilizations be fooled by beings they considered barely above animals? Commander Vex stood up again, his warrior instincts focused on the military implications. "If these dark matter warships exist, why have you not deployed them against the Void Wraiths?" "Because until now the Council has forbidden human military action outside designated sectors," Sarah answered. "And because our ships are still experimental, we weren't sure they would work against extra-dimensional threats." "But you believe they might succeed where our weapons have failed?" Xyloth asked. Sarah nodded slowly. "Human dark matter technology is designed specifically for targets that exist partially outside normal space-time. The Void Wraiths match our theoretical parameters exactly." The chamber fell silent again as the Council absorbed this information. Sarah could see the internal struggle playing out on alien features. Pride warred with desperation. Their technological superiority had defined their civilization for millennia, but that same technology was utterly useless against the current threat. Representative Lura spoke first. "If there is even a small chance that human technology could succeed, we must attempt it. The alternative is the death of galactic civilization." "Agreed," rumbled Commander Vex. "Pride is worthless against extinction." One by one, other council members voiced their reluctant support. Only Scholar Chinth and a few conservative representatives maintained their skepticism. Prime Nexarch Xyloth's crystalline body settled into a deep blue color, the shade of difficult decisions. Very well, Ambassador Chen. The Council hereby authorizes humanity to deploy experimental weapons against Void Wraith incursions. However, this authorization comes with conditions. Sarah had expected this. What conditions, Prime Nexarch? Council observers will accompany your forces to verify these claimed capabilities, Xyloth announced. If human dark matter technology proves effective, humanity will share all relevant data with Council scientists. If it proves ineffective, Admiral Marcus Stone watched the encrypted message from Ambassador Chen appear on his personal display. The Council had finally agreed to let humanity deploy the dark matter fleet. After 50 years of hiding, Project Shadowforge was about to be revealed to the galaxy. Marcus stood on the bridge of Station Prometheus, humanity's most classified facility. The station itself was invisible to conventional sensors, phasing in and out of normal space like a ghost. Located in the outer reaches of the Oort cloud, it had remained hidden from Council monitoring for 3 decades. Admiral, all fleet commanders are standing by for briefing, reported Captain Lisa Wong from the communications console. Her voice carried the slight echo that came from speaking while partially phased into dark matter space. Marcus nodded and activated the fleet-wide channel. Around him, the bridge crew worked at stations that seemed to bend reality itself. Their consoles existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, displaying information from spaces that normal physics insisted were impossible. "This is Admiral. Stone to all Shadowforge vessels," he announced. "Operation Dark Light is now active. We have 72 hours to demonstrate our capabilities to the Universal Council." On the main display, 7 massive shapes moved through space near the station. The dark matter warships looked nothing like traditional spacecraft. Their hulls flowed like living liquid, composed of crystallized dark matter that shifted between solid and ethereal states. Starlight caught in their surfaces created patterns that hurt to look at directly. The flagship Defiance led the formation. At nearly 2 kilometers long, it resembled a massive sea creature made of living shadow. Its hull rippled with captured light from distant stars, and sections of its surface phased in and out of visibility as it moved through multiple dimensions. "Captain Santos, report on Shadow Strike's status," Marcus called to the 3rd ship in formation. "All systems green, Admiral," came the reply from Captain Maria Santos. "My crew is fully synchronized with the ship's consciousness matrix. We're reading dark matter currents clearly across 17 different dimensional layers." That was the secret the Council didn't understand. Human dark matter technology wasn't just about advanced physics. It was about the fusion of consciousness and cosmic forces. Each ship required a crew whose minds were directly linked to the vessel's dark matter core, creating a hybrid entity that existed partially outside normal reality. Marcus remembered the early experiments, back when Dr. Yuki Tanaka first proposed her theories about consciousness and dark matter interaction. The scientific community had called her insane. How could human awareness affect particles that barely interacted with normal matter? The breakthrough came during humanity's darkest hour. Earth's resources were nearly exhausted, the population was dying from pollution and climate collapse, and first contact with the Council had revealed just how primitive human technology really was. Desperate times called for desperate science. Dr. Tanaka's team discovered that human brains produced quantum fields unlike any other known species. Where alien minds were highly organized and logical, human consciousness was chaotic, creative, and unpredictable. That chaos, it turned out, resonated with dark matter in ways that conventional physics couldn't explain. The first successful test involved a single volunteer linking his mind to a dark matter particle accelerator. Instead of the expected failure, the particles began responding to his thoughts and emotions. Fear made them contract. Joy made them expand. Anger made them move in patterns that violated conservation of energy. "Admiral, we're receiving priority transmission from the Kepler 186 system," reported Lieutenant Park. "Council forces are engaged with a large Void Wraith incursion. They're requesting immediate assistance." Marcus studied the tactical data appearing on his screens. The Kepler 186 system hosted 2 inhabited planets and a major trade hub. A council fleet of 43 ships from 6 different species was currently fighting 3 void wraiths the size of small moons. The battle was going poorly. Marcus watched as Nexari energy weapons passed harmlessly through the shadow creatures. Zephyrian gravity bombs had no effect on entities that existed partially outside space-time. Even the mighty Vorthak dreadnoughts, with their reality-warping weapons, couldn't touch enemies that flowed between dimensions. "Time to show them what human ingenuity can accomplish," Marcus said grimly. "All ships, prepare for dimensional transition. We're going to war." The 7 dark matter warships began to phase out of normal space. To outside observers, they seemed to fade like mirages in summer heat. But Marcus could feel the ship's consciousness matrix responding to the fleet's collective will. Each vessel carried a crew of 150 volunteers, all of them linked to the ship's dark matter core through neural interfaces that had taken decades to perfect. The technology was dangerous. Prolonged connection could drive a person insane or trap their consciousness permanently in dark matter space. But it was also incredibly powerful. Captain Elena Rodriguez of the Nightmare spoke through the fleet channel. "Admiral, my crew is reporting full-dimensional awareness. We can see the Void Wraith's true structure from here." That was another advantage of dark matter technology. While normal sensors could only detect the parts of the Wraiths that existed, in regular space, human ships could perceive their complete forms across multiple dimensions. The creatures were even larger and more complex than the Council realized. "Fleet transition in 10 seconds, announced Navigation Officer Chen. "All crews, prepare for combat consciousness merge." Marcus felt the familiar sensation of his mind, expanding beyond his physical body. His awareness spread through the Defiance's dark matter hull, letting him perceive space and time from impossible angles. The universe became a living thing, with dark matter streams flowing like blood through cosmic arteries. The fleet emerged from phase transition at the edge of the Kepler 186 system. Council ships immediately detected their arrival and sent confused queries. The human vessels appeared on sensors as massive energy signatures that didn't match any known technology. "Unknown ships, identify yourselves," came a transmission from the Council fleet commander, a Krathari warrior named Vex, whom Marcus recognized from intelligence reports. "This is Admiral Stone of the Human Dark Matter Fleet," Marcus replied. "We're here to assist with Void Wraith containment." The silence that followed lasted almost 30 seconds. Then Commander Vex's voice returned, filled with disbelief. "Human fleet? Impossible. Our sensors show massive energy signatures unlike anything in Council databases." "That's because our technology operates outside conventional physics," Marcus explained. "Requesting permission to engage the Void Wraiths." Through the ship's enhanced perception, Marcus could see the battle raging near Kepler 186 Prime. The 3 Void Wraiths moved like liquid shadows through the Council formation, their partially phased bodies immune to every weapon fired at them. They seemed to be feeding on the energy attacks, growing larger and more solid with each hit. But from dark matter space, Marcus could see their true vulnerability. The Wraiths weren't invulnerable. They were hiding in the gaps between dimensions, using dark matter streams as both shield and food source. Human ships could follow them into those spaces. "Permission granted," Commander Vex finally replied. "Our weapons have no effect on these entities. If you have technology that can reach them, use it now." Marcus activated the fleet combat protocol. "All ships, combat consciousness merge authorized. Target the primary wraith feeding on the orbital platform." The sensation was indescribable. Marcus felt his awareness merge with 6 other ship commanders, creating a collective consciousness that spanned multiple dimensions. Together, they perceived the battlefield from angles that normal minds couldn't comprehend. The largest void, Wraith, was currently draining energy from a massive orbital defense platform. From normal space, it looked like a shifting shadow wrapped around the station. But through dark matter perception, Marcus could see its true form, a massive creature, with tendrils extending across 17 different dimensional layers. "Target acquired," reported Captain Santos from the Shadow Strike. "I can see its feeding routes anchored in dark matter substrate. If we sever those connections, do it," Marcus ordered. The human ships moved like liquid poetry through space. Their dark matter hulls phased between dimensions, following paths that only existed in the gaps between reality. To the watching council ships, it looked like the human vessels were dancing with shadows. The Shadow Strike was the first to engage. Captain Santos directed her ship's consciousness into dark matter space, where the Void Wraith's feeding tendrils were anchored. The ship's weapons weren't conventional energy beams, they were focused applications of willpower and intention, crystallized into force that could affect dark matter directly. The Wraith's reaction was immediate and violent. For the first time since the crisis began, one of the shadow creatures showed pain. Its feeding tendrils writhed as the Shadow Strike's consciousness-based weapons severed its connections to dark matter space. Direct hit confirmed, Santos reported. The entity is losing cohesion in layers 4 through 9. The other human ships joined the attack, their crews working in perfect harmony through the consciousness matrix. The second Void Wraith screamed. Captain Maria Santos had never heard a sound like it. The creature's cry echoed across 17 different dimensions simultaneously, a noise that bypassed normal hearing and struck directly at the consciousness. Through her neural link with the Shadow Strike, she felt the entity's pain and confusion as her ship's weapons tore through its dark matter anchors. "Target is losing dimensional cohesion," reported her navigation officer, Lieutenant Kim. His voice carried the strange harmony that came from speaking while mentally linked to dark matter space. "It's trying to retreat deeper into the substrate." "Follow it down," Maria ordered. "Don't let it escape into the deep layers." The Shadow Strike phased further from normal reality, its hull becoming more translucent as it pursued the fleeing wraith. Around them, space looked different from this depth in dark matter. Stars appeared as brilliant threads of light stretching across impossible distances. Planets showed their gravitational fields as visible rivers of bent space-time. Through the fleet consciousness link, Maria felt Admiral Stone coordinating the attack from the flagship Defiance. His mind touched hers briefly, sharing tactical data that normal communication could never convey. The sensation was like having someone else's thoughts temporarily merge with your own. The Void Wraith was massive in dark matter space, easily 5 kilometers across with feeding tendrils that stretched through multiple dimensions. But it was also vulnerable here. In normal space, the creature could hide in the gaps between atoms. In dark matter space, it was exposed and solid. "Weapons ready," announced Gunnery Chief Park. The Shadow Strike's weapons weren't conventional energy beams or missiles. They were crystallized intentions, pure human willpower shaped into force that could affect dark matter directly. "Fire," Maria commanded. The ship's consciousness matrix focused every crew member's mental energy into a single devastating attack. 150 human minds thinking as one, their combined will shaped into a weapon that existed only because humans believed it could. The beam struck the Void Wraith's central mass and the creature convulsed. Its shadow form began to unravel as the focused consciousness disrupted its connection to the dark matter streams that sustained it. For the first time since the crisis began, one of the invaders was taking real damage. Through her link to the fleet network, Maria felt the other 6 ships pressing their own attacks. The Defiance and Nightmare were engaging the largest wraith near the orbital platform, while Voidcutter, Darkhawk, Phantom, and Ghostblade surrounded the third creature in a complex multidimensional formation. The watching council ships maintained stunned silence as the impossible unfolded before them. Their most advanced sensors could barely detect what was happening. All they could see were 7 human vessels that seemed to flicker in and out of existence, somehow inflicting damage on enemies that had been immune to every weapon in their arsenal. "Admiral Stone to all ships," came the fleet commander's voice through the consciousness link. "The council observers are requesting constant updates. They don't understand what they're seeing." Maria smiled grimly as she directed another consciousness weapon at her target's feeding apparatus. "Tell them they're seeing what happens when humans stop pretending to be primitive." The Void Wraith she was fighting began to change tactics. Instead of trying to retreat deeper into dark matter space, it started splitting itself across multiple dimensional layers. The creature was adapting, learning from the attack patterns. "Clever," Maria muttered, "but not clever enough." She expanded her consciousness through the ship's neural matrix, feeling her awareness stretch across the same dimensional layers the Wraith was using. This was the most dangerous aspect of dark matter technology. The deeper you went into multidimensional consciousness, the harder it became to return to normal human awareness. Several early test pilots high. The emergency session of the Universal Council was unlike any in galactic history. For the first time in millennia, the Chamber's seating arrangement had been completely reorganized. The human delegation no longer sat in the highest seats reserved for junior species. Instead, Ambassador Sarah Chen occupied a place of honor on the primary level, directly across from Prime Nexarch Xyloth himself. The change in seating was symbolic, but the shift in power was real. 3 days had passed since the Battle of Kepler 186, and news of humanity's victory had spread across Council space faster than their fastest ships. 7 human vessels had accomplished what the galaxy's greatest military forces could not. They had defeated the Void Wraiths. Sarah looked around the massive chamber as representatives filed in. The atmosphere was completely different from her last appearance here. Where before she had seen condescension and barely concealed amusement, now she saw fear, respect, and desperate curiosity. The aliens who had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years were struggling to understand how their fundamental assumptions about reality had been so completely wrong. The Council recognizes Ambassador Chen of the human species, Prime Nexarch Xyloth announced, his crystalline voice carrying none of its former dismissive tone. We have called this emergency session to address the revelations of recent events. Sarah stood, feeling the weight of galactic history on her shoulders. Every word she spoke here would reshape humanity's relationship with the Council and potentially alter the balance of power that had existed for millennia. Prime Nexarch, honored Council members, she began. Humanity appreciates this opportunity to clarify our position within the galactic community. Scholar Chinth of the hegemony species leaned forward anxiously. Ambassador Chen, our scientists have analyzed the sensor data from Kepler 186. The energy signatures from your vessels are completely unknown to our databases. How long has humanity possessed such advanced technology? Sarah had prepared for this question. The truth was complex and would challenge everything the Council thought they knew about technological development. Humanity has been developing dark matter manipulation technology for 53 years, she replied. Since shortly after first contact with the Council, the chamber erupted in startled voices and rapid translations. The idea that humans had been working on such advanced projects while presenting themselves as primitive was shocking to species that prided themselves on their intelligence networks. Commander Vex stood up from his seat, his scarred features grim. You mean to tell us that for half a century, humanity has been concealing military capabilities that surpass our most advanced weapons? Not concealing, Sarah corrected carefully. Developing. The technology you witnessed was experimental until 3 days ago. We weren't certain it would work against extra-dimensional threats. Representative Lura's ethereal form shimmered with agitation. But why develop such technology? In secret? Why not share your research with Council scientists who could have accelerated the process? Sarah's answer struck at the heart of the Council's assumptions about their own superiority. Because Council science declared dark matter manipulation impossible. Your greatest minds proved it couldn't be done. If we had revealed our research too early, we would have been told to abandon it as fantasy. The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah had essentially accused the Council's scientific establishment of being wrong about fundamental physics. For civilizations that had built their authority on technological advancement, the implications were staggering. Elder Moore's gas form shifted through several colors before he spoke. Are you suggesting that human science has surpassed Council understanding in certain areas? I'm suggesting that human science approached the problem differently, Sarah replied diplomatically. Where Council research focused on controlling and dominating natural forces, human scientists learned to cooperate with them. Prime Nexarch Xyloth's crystalline body cycled through several colors, the alien equivalent of deep thought. This cooperation you speak of. Our observers reported that your vessels seem to be guided by consciousness rather than conventional technology. How is such a thing possible? Sarah took a deep breath. This was the moment of ultimate truth. Because human consciousness interacts with dark matter in ways that other species' minds cannot. Our neural patterns create quantum entanglement with dark matter particles. The effect allows us to perceive and manipulate the universe's underlying structure. The chamber fell completely silent. The idea that one species might have unique mental capabilities was almost as shocking as the technological revelations. Scholar Chinth's voice carried a note of academic desperation. Impossible. We have studied hundreds of sapient species. Intelligence follows predictable patterns. There is no precedent for species-specific quantum consciousness. There is no precedent because you've never encountered a species like humanity, Sarah replied. Human consciousness is fundamentally different from other known forms of sapient awareness. More chaotic, more creative, more willing to embrace paradox and impossibility. Commander Vex stood again, his warrior instincts focused on practical implications. If human consciousness can manipulate dark matter, what other capabilities might you possess? What other technologies have you developed in secret? Sarah smiled slightly. That depends on what the Council considers our relationship to be going forward. The threat was subtle, but unmistakable. Humanity had demonstrated capabilities that made them potentially the most powerful military force in the galaxy. How that power was used would depend on how humanity was treated. Representative Lura spoke first. The Council obviously underestimated humanity's potential. What would you consider appropriate recognition of your elevated status? Full membership, Sarah said without hesitation. Voting rights on all Council decisions, an end to the restrictions on human territorial expansion, and formal recognition of humanity as a Tier 1 civilization. The request sent shockwaves through the chamber. Tier 1 status was reserved for the most advanced species in the galaxy. It carried enormous privileges and responsibilities. Elder Moore protested immediately. Tier 1 classification requires demonstration of mastery over multiple fundamental forces. Humanity has shown expertise only in dark matter manipulation. Humanity has shown the ability to defeat threats that no other Council species could touch, Sarah countered. If that doesn't qualify as mastery over fundamental forces, what does? Prime Nexarch Xyloth raised one crystalline hand for silence. The Council will need time to deliberate these requests. However, given recent events, some immediate status adjustments are clearly warranted. Sarah had expected this. The Council would not make major decisions quickly, especially ones that challenged their entire power structure. What immediate adjustments? She asked. Full diplomatic immunity for all human vessels and personnel, Xyloth announced. Removal of territorial restrictions on human expansion. And emergency authorization for humanity to deploy dark matter warships against any future Void Wraith incursions. It was less than Sarah had hoped for, but more than she had realistically expected. The Council was acknowledging humanity's new status without formally admitting their mistake in classification. The Council also requests that humanity share dark matter technology with our scientists, Scholar Chinth added hopefully. Sarah shook her head. Dark matter technology requires human consciousness to function. It cannot be transferred to other species. However, humanity is willing to provide joint defense agreements and cooperative research projects. The implications hit the Council like a physical blow. Not only did humans possess superior technology, but it was technology that other species could never use. The balance of galactic power had shifted permanently. Commander Vex spoke up again. What assurance does the Council have that humanity will not use these capabilities aggressively against member species? Sarah's answer would define humanity's role in galactic civilization for generations to come. Because humanity doesn't want to rule the galaxy. We want to explore it. The universe is vast enough for cooperation between equals. She gestured toward the massive viewing port that showed the star-filled space beyond the station. For 50 years, humanity has been treated as children who needed guidance from wiser, older species. But the Void Wraith crisis proved that wisdom doesn't always come from age or advanced technology. Sometimes it comes from new perspectives and the willingness to try impossible things. Sarah turned back to face the Council. Humanity proposes the establishment of a new organization, the Galactic Cooperative. A governing body where advancement is measured not by technological dominance, but by the willingness to explore unknown possibilities and share discoveries with others. The suggestion was revolutionary. Instead of the hierarchical structure that had defined galactic civilization for millennia, humanity was proposing a system based on equality and cooperation. Representative Lura's form brightened with interest. A cooperative rather than a council? How would such an organization function? Each member species contributes their unique capabilities to the collective good, Sarah explained.